Welcome back to the S&T Football Podcast. In this episode, we're going to do a recap of the first round, and we're going to talk about some different things, some different implications that may have happened from those first round results regarding the playoff structure and the controversy of the Alabama and Miami and Notre Dame and all of that. So we definitely saw that come to fruition, and we saw the fallout. A lot of opinions out there about just the state of college football and everything. So, without further ado, Tom, go ahead and give us your thoughts. What's on your mind? Let us know what you're thinking about.
Okay, well, boy, where to start? Where to start? We'll start with um, the last game of the night because I think that'll be the quickest and easiest to get through here. We have Oregon beating James Madison 51 to 34. I think we all saw this coming, and 51 to 34, a lot of people that didn't watch the game were kind of confused probably. They said, "Oh, it must have been somewhat of a game." Well,
No,
no, actually.
no.
Not even close. Or the game was over by halftime. Oregon was up 34 to 3. And so they had the spread covered, put their twos and threes in. The twos and threes still scored 17 points in the second half. So, you can look at the yards, you can look at the score, blah, blah, blah. But this is proof of why the group of five just shouldn't be in the playoffs unless, we've looked back in the past, okay? This is my thing. We can look back in the past and go, okay, does the group of five deserve a chance? Yes, but it's not really a big but there. But when you look back in the past, let's see how there was maybe two UCF teams when Scott Frost was the head coach there. There was probably two teams that he had that deserved into the playoffs. And then one of them ended up beating Oregon, and they actually went undefeated, and they hung a banner. But, again, there's an asterisk there because Auburn felt that they should have made the playoffs anyway, but they lost the wrong games at the wrong time. So Auburn wasn't exactly, they weren't getting up for that game. That was more of like they were disappointed going into that game, and UCF was pissed off, thought they deserved. So that game that year was a lot different. But what I'm saying is UCF that year belonged in. We forget Cincinnati. I can't remember how long ago that was when they made the college football playoffs when it was only four teams. And nobody batted an eye because everybody saw Cincinnati's resume. They saw how it was like, no doubt about it. They deserve a shot. Let's see how they play against the big boys. And they lost.
I'm glad you said it. I'm glad you said that, Tom, because everybody forgets that year that Cincinnati made the 4-team field, and because I was actually talking about this with somebody in our comments the other day, because they always mention the TCU year. They always say, "Oh yeah, we don't want to have what happened to TCU against Georgia," and I'm always like, you forget that though they won the first game. They beat Michigan in the first round to get to the Natty. So it wasn't like TCU just showed up and got blown out. They earned their way to that national championship against Georgia where they got slaughtered. But that was not a good example. A better example was what you just said when Cincinnati made the playoff and they got blown out by Alabama. That's a better example of why the group of six cannot hang with the big boys when it comes down to it. But continue.
Well, and also when you look at it, it's like, well, at the time, I'm pretty sure TCU was in the Big 12. So it wasn't like
Right.
TCU came out of nowhere.
Yeah, they were Power Four anyway, right?
At the time, Power 5. So there was, more conference, but again, it's like you go back, you can go tit for tat here and there, this, that, the other. But this year, I think it's clearly proven. I think the group of five or six or whatever they're called, they deserve the same treatment that maybe Notre Dame gets because Notre Dame wants to say, well, if we're in the top 12, we deserve in. We don't want to get kicked out like we did this year. Okay, well, what about if there's a group of five in the top 12 and like like we can't take a team that's not in a conference and they're in the top 12. Does that make like you can't take Notre Dame if they're in the top 12 and they don't even play a conference championship. But if we have a group of 5 in the top 12 and they make their conference championship and win, I mean, I think that's almost above Notre Dame in my opinion, because if the key caveat there is in the top 12. So like we're gonna need one of the years where Cincinnati had, like we're gonna need a year that Tulane had a couple years ago. Like people forget, like these teams can look really impressive, really good, go completely undefeated. And in my opinion, that's what the playoff was made for. That's why the playoff was expanded to 12 teams, because Cincinnati was it's you go back and there's all these little rabbit holes you can go down, but Cincinnati, that one year they made the 4-team playoff, is the reason I think we have a 12-team playoff now. Every time something happens in this playoff where a quote unquote wrong team gets picked or somebody gets snubbed, the committee changes rules. Like, for example, before the playoff even started, they passed a rule where Notre Dame, if they're in the top 12, they make it. So it's constantly changing. I don't think it's actually been the same rules for more than like 2 years in a row. Like, it's the amount of times the playoff system has changed is nuts, because this year it was only not next year is going to have different rules than this year, and last year had different rules than this year. So like just like right there off the rip, like 3 years in a row we're going to have different rules. So it's getting to the point where it's like, okay guys, like can we please get this right for once, like for one time? Because if you want to extend it to 16, well, okay, extend it to 16, but make sure that the parameters for getting in the playoffs are correct. That's all anybody really wants. You could make it an 18 like you could make it 8 teams. If you made it 8 teams, nobody would complain as long as you had the correct 8 teams in the playoff. This year, you did not have the correct 12 teams in the playoff. We've had 4-team playoffs where you haven't had the correct 4 teams in. You can just go on and on and on. And now, I know we're reviewing the first round, but this is just a quick little recap of the entire history where it's like, I don't think there's been a year where a team, like when was a year that you can remember where you go, oh yeah, all 4 of those teams belonged in? Maybe the TCU year, like you mentioned, when TCU beat Michigan, but people were saying TCU didn't belong in. And then because, they were like, oh, there should be 2 SEC teams. And it's like, no. TCU went undefeated. TCU played really well against everybody. And they beat Michigan. So, like, proof is in the pudding right there. No, we do not need 2 SEC teams in a 4-team playoff when there's a Big 12 team that can beat, another. Anyway, long story short.
Right.
This year was the wrong 12 teams. But any year, any rules, anything, there's going to be complaints. But I think this year was by far the most obvious, when you had Ole Miss beat Tulane just as bad as they beat them the first time, shocker. And then Oregon blew out James Madison, put their backups in to start the second half. No shocker there. And, still beat them by 17. Alabama, Oklahoma, that was a good game, 34-24. Oklahoma started up 17-0. That was a good game to watch. Miami, Texas A&M, 10-3. That was a good game to watch. Like, let's put Notre Dame in for James Madison. Let's see Notre Dame play Oregon. And then let's see Vanderbilt play Ole Miss. Or vice versa. Let's see Vanderbilt play Oregon and Notre Dame play Ole Miss. That would have been such a better first round, because then you're looking at like, well, geez, the 11 seed Notre Dame might actually beat Ole Miss. Like, I would have probably taken Ole Miss if it was or I would have taken Notre Dame if it was Notre Dame versus Ole Miss. And if it's Vanderbilt, Oregon, I still think Oregon wins, but it's not going to be 34-3 at halftime. So I think, bottom line, first round proved what everybody's been screaming. It's like, it's not a new take. But and for a new format, I'm not sure how you work that. But I think it's simple enough that you basically just, I mean, I think even the simplest thing to do is take the top 12 teams, but then you get into, it's like, well, then the committee's going to bump people out the same way they did this year anyway. So maybe, but that's just a maybe. I don't know. This year was messed up because of the wording of the rules. So by technicality, the 12 teams that made the playoffs this year, by technicality, were the correct teams to make it. Only exception would have been maybe Notre Dame. And then maybe Vanderbilt over, like I don't know who you would take Vanderbilt over, but that like those are the only two teams that were really the what ifs this year. So it's not even like we had that many what ifs this year to expand it to 16, in my opinion. I think 12 is fine. I think this year was just proof that we need to change the wording. And I don't know. They already changed the wording for Notre Dame, so why don't we change the wording for everybody in the right way? Because you already you kind of you held Notre Dame's hand, even though they boycotted. Eh, the NCAA sued Notre Dame, and then they were like, "Sorry, we sued you for $4 million. We'll change the rules so next year, if it happens again, you'll make it. You don't have to join a conference." It's like, are you trying to make them join a conference or not? I don't know. Like it's it's very frustrating to see the hypocrisy consistently, this, that, the other. But again, I could keep going all day, but I'm gonna shut up and let you talk. So sorry.
Everything you're saying is true, Tom, and yes, we have to discuss it because I'm gonna talk about the other game. You talked about James Madison, Oregon. Of course, that was a bloodbath by halftime. Also, the other game, Tulane and Ole Miss. We see a rematch. Literally, those two teams played twice this year. I mean, I don't know why Ole Miss had to prove the point again, but they literally went and did the same thing they did the first time. Like we saw Tulane go to Ole Miss twice and get absolutely both times.
Before I forget, can I just make this one point real quick?
Go ahead.
Because I know I'm gonna forget.
Go ahead.
So I think it's funny how you mentioned that, and it just unlocked a little thing in the back of my brain. So we have a head to head between Ole Miss and Tulane that that we saw at the beginning of the year, same as we saw Notre Dame Miami. But by technicality, actually, how do you take Tulane and not Notre Dame there? Because by technicality, if Ole Miss, we've already seen Tulane get blown out by Ole Miss. What did Notre Dame do to, like, why can't Notre Dame be number 12 and James, you know what I mean? Like, just putting that out there. I know by technicality it's conference champion,
Yep.
but
5 highest ranked champions, and Notre Dame's not in the conference.
yes, by technicality, but at the same time, it's like, well, can't Notre Dame be considered a group of on their own?
See, and that's what I was going to get into that during my spill. I was going to talk about that right there.
No, go. Yeah, talk. No, talk about it. I didn't mean to steal your spiel, but that was just the point I wanted to bring up. Because yeah, go for it. Tell them. Yeah, take off on that.
There are ways we can fix this, and it's like there's 3 ways in my mind. So like you said, I'm just going to finish your point. You talked about the history of the group of 6 being here in the playoff and going against the big boys, and can they really hang with the big dogs? And I think at this point it's been proven that they cannot. And we gotta stop playing around with it. Like we gotta be realistic at a certain point. Like there are levels to college football. There are reasons why we have Division 3, Division 2, Division 1 FCS, and then Division 1 FBS. There are all different levels of college football. This is why we have these levels, because these teams cannot play with these teams. Yes, we see FBS teams play FCS teams every year. It's kind of a little tradition of college football. Yes, sometimes an FCS team can beat an FBS team. Yes, it happens, but usually it's not going to be a FCS team beating Ohio State. That's just not going to happen, because we understand that Ohio State is just on a different level. We have to start to be realistic when it comes to the group of 6 and the Power 4. These two different categories of college football have just separated themselves so much over the last decade, and a half, with NIL and transfer portal and big money and just everything. Like these two categories of college football are not the same anymore. We have to stop pretending like they are. Central Michigan has no business being in the same conversation as Alabama. Like we we have to stop pretending like they do. I don't care if Central Michigan goes 12-0. They're still not going to compete with Alabama. It's just not going to happen. So we have to start being realistic. And I think not only with, Tulane getting blown out, also James Madison, we literally saw two group of six teams get blown out in the playoff this year. I think we've seen enough. We've seen enough evidence that we can go back to the drawing board and be like, okay, we have to start treating the group of six as a completely different entity because they just cannot hang. They can't. We go all the way back to Central Florida, like you talked about. Central Florida is the biggest, what if they would have made the playoff, right? They went 12-0, they missed, and they beat Auburn that year, right? And they hung up a banner, they said they were national champs, and when everybody was mad about it, and they were all, rooting for them, it was cute, it was cool. But at the end of the day, we know they couldn't have. They were not going to hang with whoever was in the playoff that year. They just weren't. The next year, Central Florida also went 12-0. They played LSU, who had Joe Burrow, and they lost. Okay, so we saw that happen. We saw Cincinnati make the playoff in the 14. They got blown out by Alabama. We saw Boise State last year make the playoff. They got a bye. And they got blown out first game against Penn State. We've seen this enough times where we're like, okay, we got to stop playing this game. It's not gonna happen. The group of six is not going to hang with the big boys when it comes down to it. Yes, could they have beaten a lesser FBS team during the year? Yes, like Tulane beat Duke and Northwestern during the year. Yes, but that's Duke and Northwestern, not Ohio State and Georgia. Those are two
Yeah,
different levels. So
yeah. The only thing about the only good thing about the Duke win is that Duke somehow miraculously ended up winning the ACC. But then it's like, well,
but
Duke is probably the same level as Northwestern,
right,
and it's like, and where did Northwestern end up? Because why, Cezanne? Because why? Tell me, please tell me. And I know you know. This isn't a trick question, but you know the answer. You know why? Why did Duke make the ACC championship at 7-5, but Northwestern didn't make the Big Ten championship at 7-5? I wonder.
because the ACC is just not it, and we have to stop being so inclusive. We have to stop being so, we gotta let the little guy play. No, no, because then we have games like we had this past weekend, and we're wasting everybody's time. We're wasting money. You're wasting TV ratings and all that. Like these are irrelevant games. We should not be having irrelevant games in the playoff, and that's what we had this past weekend. Two irrelevant games. Two is
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I hate interrupting you again, but it's also it's just like one of those things where it's like, yes, two irrelevant games, but it's and you just yeah, no, I'm just gonna beat a dead horse, but it's just like put Vanderbilt, Notre Dame, and Jesus Christ, see what happens for fuck's sake.
Right, but they're sitting
I shut up.
send that home. BYU, send that home. Like, what are we doing, man? What are we doing? Like, we have to stop being cute. We have to stop, saying, oh, the little guy has a chance. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. You go 12-0. That's cute. That's nice. You're not gonna beat Ohio State. It's just not gonna happen. So we okay. So let me get to my three solutions because I think at this point we have seen enough of the group of six versus the big dogs in the playoff to know that we have to do something. It has to change. We cannot continue to do this. There are three solutions, three easy solutions in my mind. Maybe not easy, but three solutions to the problem that we have right now. The first solution, I think it's probably the most straightforward one. It makes the most sense to me. We classify Notre Dame as a group of six. You make the independent conference, whatever you want to call it, the independents as a group of six. It makes the most sense. They're already not considered Power Four, so just make them part of the whole group of six realm. It just makes more sense to me because Most of those teams are on the group of six level anyway. The only exception is Notre Dame. And if you classify Notre Dame as a group of six team, that means that the group of six representative every year is actually going to be a competitive team. Because it's either going to be Notre Dame or it's going to be a really good group of six team. Those are the only choices. You know what I mean? So, and that also eliminates the whole Notre Dame problem. Now Notre Dame's not unhappy and complaining about being left out. You are the group of 16, so now you're playing instead of Tulane or instead of James Madison. Everybody that
I don't mean to cut you off again, but I just want to let you know, like, so unfortunately, Notre Dame must have had some in with the conference because before they could actually be logical and make that decision, they changed the rule before the playoffs even started and just said, oh, no, Notre Dame doesn't count as a group of 5 or 6 or whatever the group is. No, as long as Notre Dame's in the top 12, they're in, which is insanity to me. But also, to me, that also, like, I agree with your rule more because that would guarantee Notre Dame to be in more than the current rule
right,
because all they have to do is the same thing they did this year to Notre Dame.
right.
If Notre Dame's number 10 and it's like, well, what if we just, yeah, we'll just drop you back to 13 now? It's like, well, then Notre Dame still gets shafted. So it's like, can we, like, I 100% agree. I just wanted to put that out there that again, the committee changed the rule, but there's still a hole in the rule. You know what I mean? Where it's like you can say, okay, if Notre Dame's top 12, well, what if the committee just decides last second, like they did this year, that Notre Dame's not top 12? There's still holes.
They would still be ranked higher than any group of six team, and I think in my format that means they make the playoff either way. So everyone's happy. Notre Dame makes the playoff this year, and we don't have irrelevant games in the first round. It just makes the most sense. Just make the independents part of the group of six. Now Notre Dame is in the playoff every year unless a group of six team is really good, which they need to be to even be part of the conversation. So it just makes the most sense to me. I know the committee did what they did already, and I feel like they jumped the gun. We still have a whole off season to make changes, and I think changes will be made. So I won't get into their stupidity too much because they're just annoying, as we know. But that's just a change that I think immediately solves the problem, right? The other option, I mean, other than Notre Dame just joining a conference, which seems to be, impossible for some reason to them. So I don't know. I don't know. You make the playoff just the top 12, like just straight up. You just make the playoff the top 12 teams. It makes the most sense. It's the most simple. Every conference would have been included. Also, if you would have did that, because Miami would have made it. With the last move that they made. Now Notre Dame still would have got left out in that scenario, but it makes sense because it's the top 12. Like, what? Oh no, Notre Dame was what they got.
Yeah, Notre Dame was 12.
They're,
They would have just made it.
so Notre
They would have played. They would have played Oregon.
Yeah, so never mind. Notre Dame makes it. So once again, it solves everyone's problem, solves Notre Dame's problem. Every conference would have been included also because Miami was 11. So you would have had every Power Four conference make it. Notre Dame would have made it, and we wouldn't have two teams that didn't belong. Problem solved right there. Just take the top 12. Stop all of these little rules. Oh, five highest ranked conference champions. Oh, this and that. Oh, this and that. No, just the top 12. Everyone's happy. If you don't make the top 12, you're not one of the best 12 teams in college football. That's the goal
And
from the beginning.
it would have taken out all their little silly games that they played where,
Right.
like you said, again, like you were right about this. Like I gotta say, like you were right. You told me so. They kept inching Miami closer to Notre Dame. It's like, well, you can just take all that bullshit out and throw it out the window. Leave Notre Dame at 10. Leave Miami at 12. Leave BYU at 11. And then what? And then the only team that's complaining is Vanderbilt.
But Tom, the point is that we would actually get the best 12 teams in college football. That was the entire point of the committee in the first place. Before we had a 12-team playoff, we had a committee and everything. The whole
Mm-hmm.
point of them creating it was to put the best 12 teams in college football in the playoff. What happened to that? Why did we get away from that? Why did we get away from that objective? Because If you look at last week, James Madison and Tulane, they are not one of the 12 best teams in college football. Everyone knows that now. Even James Madison and Tulane know that. Now they will even tell you, yes, we are not one of the best 12 teams in college football. So why are they playing? What happened to that? What happened to the main objective? And I think we've gotten too cute. We've gotten too political. Too much money and sponsor and all of this influence. We need to get away from that. We need to get back to 12 best teams, because if you put the 12 best teams in, everyone outside of that can be mad, but they can't be too mad to the point where it doesn't make sense. It makes sense because it's the top 12, so no one can really
Hmm.
anything else on that, Tom? Because I have one more solution.
No, I mean, like you said, like I think you hit it on the head where it's like, oh, it's like we're trying to be too inclusive, and it's like, oh, we don't. It's like, well, we can't keep them out because if we keep them out, they don't make the money. It's like, well, maybe they don't deserve to make the money this year because they're not good enough. Just a crazy concept. I don't know. Like maybe if you're not one of the 12 best teams, your school doesn't deserve to make the money. Like be better, I guess. Like I don't know what to tell you because it's not like both Tulane and James Madison, like you guys didn't even go undefeated. We're kicking out an 11-1 BYU team who lost in the Big 12 championship to the number 4 team in the country. Okay, they lost to them twice. Boo hoo. They're not going to play them first round. What if they beat Ole Miss? Like, keep them at 11. They beat Ole Miss. And then what? Then what do you say? Then what do you say? Does BYU not belong? But guess what? Well, maybe BYU would have lost the same way they lost to Texas Tech, to Ole Miss, blah, blah, blah. But it would have, the pregame, the hype, the spread, everything, it would have been way closer. They would have been like, well, this is how BYU can win. I didn't hear a single analyst go, well, this is how James Madison can beat Oregon. I didn't hear a single analyst go, well, this is how Tulane beats Ole Miss.
Because it wasn't going
It's like everybody knew. They're like, well, it's just not possible. Like I guess it's possible.
Tom,
But you have how many years ago did Appalachian State upset Michigan? How many years ago was that?
like 20 years ago.
Yeah. So like what? We get one of those games every 20 years? Like what?
By the way, that was in a week one game, not in the playoff.
And that, yeah, so it's like, yeah, and it's like, and
Week one.
but now we're just supposed to pretend that after a full season and a full resume, it's like, oh, Tulane, yeah,
We,
Tulane was 10-2, I believe. It's
we
like,
literally,
but we're supposed to pretend that Tulane winning their conference championship is better than a 10-2. I mean, Jesus Christ, a 10-2 Utah, like,
you
like
said it.
I'd take Utah over Tulane in that game. Like, what is going on?
You said it, because I was just going to say that. We literally took a two-loss Tulane team over a two-loss Vanderbilt, BYU, Notre Dame.
BYU only had one loss on top of that.
Like, we're not even talking about undefeated group of 6 teams. That's the craziness of this. Like, if Tulane and James Madison were both 12-0, we could still have this conversation, but at least they're undefeated. Tulane went 10-2. Like, what are we even doing? What are we even talking about? Like, that should tell you in itself, like, there's a problem here. How does a 2-loss group of 6 team get in over a 2-loss SEC team? Like,
And by the committee's logic,
what are we doing?
you would think that Notre Dame, even though they didn't play in a conference championship, should still be considered